Hello, welcome to Generational Ministries. I'm your host, Sandra Fitzgerald. Today's subject and short story title is Webs of Deceit. Have you ever been strolling in your garden or on your porch and suddenly you find your face covered with a silken thread that's tickly, itchy, and irritating because you cannot get it off? The more you fight with it, the more entangled you become. It's all in your eyes, your hair, your clothes, and especially your face. In desperation, you begin rubbing and pulling, and finally you break free. You, my friend, have just come in contact with one of nature's most deceptive creations of all times, a spider's web. At first glance, it is a beautiful, lacy, delicate thing of whimsical beauty. It makes one think of fairy tales and faraway places. However, if you take the time to study one long enough, its purpose comes to light. Picture this: an unsuspecting fly comes along. He doesn't even see the web. Next thing he knows, he's some spider's dinner, all wrapped up, tangled up, and waiting to be devoured. Now compare this to the way Satan uses our own lusts and secret desires to trap us in webs of deceit. We don't even realize we are trapped until it's too late. For instance, a pastor, really not knowing himself, begins to counsel a young woman. Now, he's married with 2 children and has a great reputation among his peers. He has been advised by his deacons many times not to counsel members of the opposite sex alone in his office. He ignores the warning. Thinking more highly of himself than he ought, he begins his sessions. The web has been spun and the trap is set. He doesn't even realize he's about to be devoured. Everything seems so innocent and open, and he feels so right, thinking he's fulfilling his duty as a pastor. But remember Proverbs 14:12. There is a way that seems right to a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. In time, rather than meeting in his office, they are now going to coffee. The web tangles. He starts to feel attracted to her. The web twists. He starts seeing her at her home. The web tightens. He gives in to his feelings, and they end up in a full-blown affair. He's trapped. How does he break free? His wife will find out. He'll lose the respect of his congregation and his children. His colleagues will be disgusted. He doesn't want to give up everything he's worked for, yet he is also trapped by his feelings for the girl. Yes, he is well and truly trapped. How does he get free? In this lesson, we'll be looking at many different types of webs. Webs of lust, greed, envy, hatred, pride, and webs of fear and desperation. We will encounter people from all through the Bible and people today. We will see that people throughout history have struggled with webs. Remember, Ecclesiastes chapter 1 verse 9 ends with, "And there is no new thing under the sun," like it's all happened before. The one thing all webs have in common is the fact that once caught, it's not impossible to get out. The question that we will be repeating at the end of each illustration will be, how do you get free? The answer will be given at the very end of the lesson. But first, let's get tangled up in our story. In other words, let's spin a yarn. Okay, let's travel back in time to a place in biblical history called Babylon. Here we find a king named Nebuchadnezzar. Now old Neb gets caught up in a web of pride. His entrapment begins with a dream. In the book of Daniel 4 and 3, he begins an account of a dream about a great tree reaching far across the world. The tree is cut down to a stump and is left to exist among the beasts of the field. Daniel explains what this means to the king. He has grown mighty and proud through the world, and if he's not careful to give praise to God Almighty, it is he that will be cut down and dwell among the beasts of the field for 7 years. He is warned by Daniel that if he doesn't break away from sin, all these things will be manifested in his life. The web is spun. The trap is set. Not 12 months later, we find Nebuchadnezzar on the roof of the palace, heart filled with pride, claiming he built Babylon. In the same hour, he is grazing with the beasts of the field. He's caught up in a web of pride. How does he get free? We'll leave old Neb hanging there for a while, and we'll see if we can't find another web. Oh, look, there is Haman. Isn't he the guy that hated Mordecai because he wouldn't bow down and reverence him? Yep, that's him. Now we're in the book of Ruth. Haman was filled with rage that grew every time he saw Mordecai. The web is spun. The trap is set. Haman set out to kill not only Mordecai, but all of the Jews. In his evil brilliance, he used the king's pride to aid him in his treachery. And unfortunately for him, he's the one that ended up being trapped in a web of hatred of his own making. How does he get free? Read about him in the book of Esther. In the meantime, let's continue our web search. Since we're still in the Old Testament, let's find someone caught up in a web of greed. Oh, I see Jacob hanging there. It must be. Look like he's making a stew. Wonder what he's up to. Oh yeah, we get it. Genesis 27 and 6. Find he and his mother Rebekah conspiring to steal a birthright from Esau, his brother. The web is spun. The trap is set. Genesis 27:42 tells that Esau is planning to kill Jacob for his treachery. He didn't want him stealing his birthright. Now how does Jacob get free of this web of greed and Esau's wrath? Okay, speaking of greed, what about his kinsman Lot? Genesis 13 and 10 finds him greedily choosing the best land in Jordan for his cattle, while leaving Abraham with what would be considered as less desirable Canaan. Unbeknown to him, Lot is about to be entangled in a web of wickedness he could have never imagined. Had it not been for his greed, he would have never ended up in the doomed city of Sodom. The very name of this city conjures up an image of disgust. How does Lot get free? Just leave him hanging there. We continue to search for our webs. What about the web of disobedience? How easy it is for us sometimes to be talked into doing something we know it's not God. Balaam the prophet can vouch for this. Find his story in Numbers 22:21. He's saddling his donkey, heading out with the princess of Moab. The web is spun, the trap is set. How does Balaam get free? Keep moving. We'll find out later that there are webs everywhere. Now we don't want to get tangled up while we're on our expedition. Oh no, we walk right into a web of envy. The person is caught up in this web is the brother of the prodigal son. Remember we talked about him in our story of the storehouse. He watches with bitterness when his brother gets his inheritance and merrily goes on with his life. Can't you just hear the envy and anger in his heart as he stays behind to farm? Listen to his heart being twisted in the web of envy in Luke 15:29. After his brother returns, a party is thrown in his honor. And this is what he said to his dad. I have been with you all these years and always obeyed you, yet you never gave me a party. So now, can I have a party with my friends? Yet as soon as this one comes back, he get the fatted calf. Don't we see the web spinning? Envy and bitterness has taken root. In fact, the web is spun, the trap is set. How does this brother break free? Let him hang there for a while. Help is coming. In the meantime, since we're in the New Testament now, up ahead is a web of lust. There's a woman at the well. It looks like Jacob's web from here. John 4:4 confirms this. This is Jacob's well. This is a Samaritan woman drawing water, and then she's heading back home to a man that's not her husband. In fact, we find out in verse 18, she's had 5 such men. How does she find herself in this web of lust? Was it poverty? Was it loneliness? Was it she simply looking for love in all the wrong places? Whatever the reason, she finds herself trapped in this web. The web is well and truly tangled. The web is spun. The trap is set. How does she break free? These webs are so fascinating. We'll search out 2 more biblical references. Then we will come up to our day and time and find a couple of webs. Up ahead in the same book of John, there are 2 webs of betrayal hanging there. Caught in the first web is a man named Judas. Now we know all about Judas. Judas was the disciple that betrayed Jesus. Now how did he get there? We'll backtrack to Mark 14:4 and visit with Simon the leper. Judas became enraged when a woman at Simon's house broke open an alabaster box of expensive perfume and poured it on Jesus' head. His web begins to spin with greed, which births betrayal and lands him in a web of no return. The web is spun, the trap is set. How will Judas break free? We'll find out soon. What did we say? We said 2 webs were hanging there. Who was caught in the other one? Did you hear the crowing of a rooster? Oh, that must be Simon Peter. What kind of web is that? Oh, okay. It's called fear and denial. John 18 verses 15 through 27 gives an account of Peter's action following the arrest of his master and friend Jesus. For a moment there, Peter and Judas' webs look like an awful scene, and they look a lot alike. But what's the difference? Judas' web is spun out of greed. Peter's web is spun out of an unconverted heart. Remember in Luke 22:32, when Jesus told Peter, "And when thou art converted, strengthen thy brother," indicating Peter did not fully understand Jesus' mission. Therefore, he was fearful of the outcome of the trial. For the lesson's sake, the bottom line is this: they are both trapped. The web is spun. The trap is set. How do they break free? Let's put them on hold, and then we're going to fast forward to the future. There's a young accountant at a very prestigious law firm. He likes to gamble as a recreational outlet. In time, his hobby becomes his addiction. Now he's working the books to cover his debts. He's into the company for thousands of dollars. Wow. The web is spun. The trap is set. How does he break free of this web of embezzlement? In the office 2 floors down, there's a manager that loves to gossip. She is in everybody's business. She not only encourages gossip, she repeats gossip, whether it is factual or not. By some miracle, she's up for promotion. There's just one problem. She has spread a vicious rumor about the person that's doing her evaluation, and that person is fully aware of it. How does Miss Busybody break free of this web of gossip she's tangled herself in? But let's let her stew for a moment while we check out a couple of more webs. In the same office building on the 5th floor, there's a young computer intern just completing his 4th week on the job. Very impressive. His future is bright. He is as smart as a whip. He can tear a computer down and build it right back up again in no time. The web started spinning for him when he lied on his application. You see, he acquired his computer skills while he was incarcerated after being convicted of a felony. He's caught in a web of lies, fear of being discovered. How will he get free? And here's one more web. A couple gets married. They both want children. They try over 3 years. Finally, she goes to see a fertility specialist. Unfortunately for her, her web started spinning when she was a teenager and had an illegal abortion, which left her uterus so scarred she can no longer bear children. She's devastated. This was a secret web where no one was ever supposed to find out. How does she get free of this web of lies? In all of our webs for the modern day, the scenario the web is spun and the trap is set. How do they break free? That's a good question. We've chased this question down through the centuries of time. How does one escape from the tangled silk of a web of trouble? Remember in the introduction, we said it was next to impossible, but we did not say it was impossible. There are 2 ways to be free from a web of lies and deceit: hatred, envy, pride, gossip, bitterness, and all webs of this kind. Sadly, the most tragic way is to go the way of most things caught in nature's webs. The victim dies in the web. Haman and Judas both died in their webs of treachery. Like Judas, the young accountant at the law firm took his own life. That was the one that was embezzling, and he took his own life in desperation and despair. Now that is so tragic. Tragically, these men did not realize that there is another way. We can let David speak since these were his words after he had been caught in a web of lust with Bathsheba. He was confessing to God when he said in Psalms 51:6, "Thou desirest truth in the inward man." In other words, to your own self be true. At least don't lie to yourself. Just tell the truth. Because sometimes I think we can lie so much we start to believe our own lies and get caught up in a web of lies. Now that's the answer to how to get out of the web. The victim must own up to or take responsibility for their actions. We have all been tangled up in webs of one kind or another, and the only way out alive and intact is to just tell the truth. Will it be costly? Yes, usually very. However, the freedom of conscience is worth the sacrifice. The preacher in the beginning of our story lost his congregation, but after confessing, he regained his soul and his family stuck by him. In Daniel 4:34, Nebuchadnezzar lifted his head and spoke truth concerning God's dominion and who was really in charge, and God restored his sanity. In Genesis 32:10, Jacob spoke the truth about himself concerning his actions after wrestling with God all night. In verse 28, he received his power and he was restored to his brother Esau. Genesis 19:12-22 finds Lot escaping a web of Sodom with a truth spoken by the angels. The angels told Lot to escape to the mountains, or surely you will die. He is spared to enter into the city of Zoar. Numbers 22, verse 35-30. Balaam hears the truth through the mouth of a donkey. Now, when a donkey starts talking to you, I think you might ought to listen. And he gets back on track with God. In Luke 15:31, the brother of the prodigal son found his web of envy and greed was too much for him to carry, and he found his way out when his father spoke the truth to him. And he told him, "Son, you've always been with me, and everything I have is yours." Just because he gave the younger son his inheritance did not mean that the older son had lost his blessings and inheritance. In John 4:13, the woman at the well was freed from her web when Jesus spoke truth into her life about living water. That means he is the water of life. She didn't need all those men. She had everything she needed if she just would trust in Jesus to get her through her life. John 21 finds Peter's web breaking free when he told the truth about Jesus, his resurrection, and Jesus' love for him. Even after Peter denied him before his death, Jesus still showed his love for Peter by entrusting him with his people, his sheep, in other words. God always loves. The busybody at the office happened to be evaluated by a Christian lady who believed in second chances. After confessing the truth about the rumors, she retained her job and changes her ways. The computer intern comes clean about his application. He loses that job. However, 6 months later, we find him at an even better job. This time he checked the box that asked about prior convictions. The young woman with the internal scars confessed her past to her husband. He was compassionate and forgiving, and they went on to adopt 2 sons. This lesson is the story about being caught in webs. A lot of times we try to hide behind the truth of things, and we think we've got away with something, and in truth we haven't gotten away with anything, because sooner or later, as I like to say, the bill is going to come due, and y'all remember the Pied Piper. The Pied Piper is going to hold out his hand for his payment. Any wrong you do is going to show up later in your life. The Bible says, what's done in the dark will come to light. What's whispered in the house will be shouted from the rooftop. So it's best that we try to live the way that we should live, and when we do falter, take accountability and responsibility so we won't be caught up in a web that is so hard for us to get out of. This has been a teaching from Generational Ministries, and I hope that you tune in with me again as we get another short story underway. Thank you.